Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello, welcome back to Soul Archaeology. We are officially in July, one of the most dynamic months of 2026, and another one of those sort of ignition point months. We had one in March. We have another one in July. We're going to be moving into eclipse season in August. So, like I said, I've said this many times, the summer is fast and there's so much here to work with. I wouldn't get too caught up in really trying to figure out the exact perfect way to do things, but to pay attention and to let that sort of lead you into this acceleration of energy. Last week, we ended with the Uranus-Mars conjunction on July 4th, and this was incredibly intense. We're going to be in this energy until really the 11th. So through this week, it's not exact as it was on the 4th. So Mars is starting to separate from Uranus, but we'll still be feeling it. We'll still be working with the sort of personalization of some of these Uranian codes. It's Uranus and Gemini coding that has been infiltrating our fields since the end of April. This more personal layer, this more personalized embodiment of Uranus and Gemini, because Mars is now conjunct with it, really started when Mars moved into Gemini right at the end of June, and then it built up to July 4th. So you might have had sudden breakthroughs, realizations, events happening or unfolding. This is an activation point. It's an awakening point. Uranus carries that energy anyway. Uranus in Gemini is related to the electrical currents of the earth, of the body, how things move, how we communicate. So there's an acceleration of that. And then Mars makes it more personal. Mars is a personal planet, so it's closer to us here on Earth. We experience it more obviously in our daily lives. And so having Mars in Gemini as well brings this more personal layer where we can kind of touch and feel it in daily life maybe more easily than we would. And there's heat, right? There's heat all over the world. Of course, in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in summer, but there's been this insane heat wave all over throughout the States where I am, but then also really impacting Europe. And there's pressure here. There's pressure to change something. There's pressure building. There's pressure around how we travel, communicate, how things move, how our own internal systems interact with those external experiences. I really recommend going back and listening to my Uranus and Gemini episode I think it's episode 151, and I do a deep dive there, really getting into the layers of what this transit means, what it will feel like when we have activations from our personal planets to Uranus and Gemini. It's going to create more awareness. Like I said, you'll start to feel and experience it in daily life more obviously, just because Uranus is an outer planet, so it kind of affects these larger scale themes throughout our lives. But having Mars there means that we're going to touch and feel it. And similarly to when Uranus formed a T-square with the lunar nodes a few weeks ago, this is trying to push us into something or out of something. It's trying to break a pattern. It's trying to help us expand our consciousness. And this is a theme for the rest of July as well. I want to talk a little bit about the energy of July before we dive into this week in particular, just because I've been talking about July for a long time, and I feel that it's important to really give it space to have its own space to express. So July in particular has this acceleration, this evolutionary pressure We have all of the outer planets getting lit up besides Saturn. Saturn's left out of it, although Saturn is hitting a square with the sun this week. So Saturn is getting some illumination before all these other outer planets start to activate together. So we began July, like I said, with this hot and fiery Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini, which is interesting because we had CERN shut down. And I'm not going to go into that too much because it's quite frankly a lot more than just, a few minutes of a podcast episode. But that really affects the currents of the earth. That really affects the frequency. And we're going to notice more and more as we move through this Uranus and Gemini transit, how frequencies affect us. Frequency power dynamics are going to arise, and frequency medicine, which we already know about, but also frequency weaponization. And so that's all I'll say about it, but it certainly created this ripple through the frequencies of the earth. We have so many solar flares happening as well. So there's definitely this buildup that's occurring, and it's really going to continue throughout July. This week we have the Sun in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries on July 6th. On the 7th, Neptune stations retrograde in Aries, and then on July 9th, Venus enters Virgo. So it might feel like there's a little bit of a slowdown this week. Venus is stabilized in an earth sign. Neptune stations retrograde in Aries. So there's this Neptunian sort of thinning of the veil that happens. I'll go deeper into these transits, but I'm just laying out the energy of July. As we move into next week, it's really going to be interesting. There's this formation that's building in the sky. It's called Barbeau's basket because Barbeau was an astrologer who was tracking different astrological alignments and noticed July of 2026 in particular as something where a major reset occurs. We have all these different formations that can happen in astrology. Astrology is quite literally geometry. So we're studying the geometric relationship between planets, between our existence here on Earth and other planets and how they relate. And so this formation in particular involves Jupiter, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, and they're all at 4 degrees. So they're all creating this basket formation. Jupiter is opposing Pluto. It is forming a sextile to Uranus. Uranus is forming a sextile to Neptune and a trine to Pluto. Neptune is forming a trine with Uranus and Pluto and a trine to Jupiter. And Pluto is forming a sextile to Neptune, a trine to Uranus, and an opposition to Jupiter. So all of these planets are woven together into this basket. And they're all harmonious aspects besides this opposition between Pluto and Jupiter. That's kind of the lid of the basket, if you will. It's sort of a containing point. But these other points are sort of expanding and growing, looking for ways to hold more, to grow more, to expand more. And I'll be talking more about this next week when it really starts to exact the energy here, this 4-degree point between all of these planets really starts to build on the 15th. So the exact sort of range of this entire basket formation is the 15th through the 25th, but the more sort of active or concentrated energy is the 18th through the 20th of July. So between those dates, we have this weaving happening. And we've been in this energy. This has been something we've been talking about, this, especially this trine between Pluto and Uranus. The outer planets move really slowly. So we've been in this energy, but what's new and different, which I've mentioned quite a bit on this podcast so far, is that Jupiter enters, and Jupiter provides more of a sort of personalization. Jupiter moves much faster through the zodiac, so it takes a year rather than 8 and 14 years like some of these other planets and 20 years like Pluto with the specific transit through Aquarius. So Jupiter's activating all of this, lighting it like a match and sort of creating this weaving, or sealing this weaving. And it couldn't happen without Jupiter. So This is all happening mid-July, and we have the new moon in Cancer on the 14th. So that's setting this deeper tone. We're still in Mercury retrograde through the 23rd of July. We're in the shadow, really all of July. So there's this deeper tone, and there's this sort of personalization. There's this embodiment piece that Cancer is providing. And then, like I said, the 15th through the 20th, the 25th is really defined by these sextiles, trines, and oppositions, this Barbeau's basket, if you will. Then on the 26th, Saturn retrogrades in Aries. The 26th also holds this pivot point of the lunar nodes, which I will talk more about as we move into this deepening of July and how that affects Jupiter's journey through Leo, because it really sort of tones that entire journey as well. And then we end the month with a full moon in Aquarius. So we have this incredibly dynamic month. There's a lot of supportive aspects. There's a lot of retrograde energy. We're entering that underworld journey, which we'll go more into today when we talk about Neptune stationing retrograde in Aries. But there's also this alignment, this very auspicious alignment happening with the outer planets that's going to set in motion things that are essential in our evolutionary journey here. And I just want to say, most of July, I'm just sort of generalizing here. I'll be really, segmenting this by week, but all of July is here to accelerate our evolutionary path. So things that happen now are going to really define the rest of our lives, which is, sounds intense, but and actually not even just the rest of our lives, but future lifetimes and future timelines and things that we can't even tune into or grasp quite yet. This is also really significant collectively. I think that what we see unfold over the next few weeks is going to drastically shift the timelines that we're operating within. And I think CERN had a huge part of that as well. It's slowing down the energy in a way and allowing us to drop in deeper. But there's also a shift happening as far as timelines and where we're headed. And I believe when I tune into it, I get this message that there's perhaps an acceleration of a timeline that was maybe going to take longer before. This is a collective timeline. Of course, that means our individual timelines as well, but there's certainly a speeding up happening. This may feel light. This may feel frantic. This might feel overstimulating, or it might feel really nice for you. It just depends on your own nervous system. And as you know, I've talked about this so many times, but sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record, so that's why I say that. But we're here to deepen into the body. We are here to embody deeper soul work and to help the physical upgrade. The earth, helping her in her processes, these solar flares, she's really having to do a lot of work to integrate these solar flares and integrate the extra light. And then our physical bodies, which are of the earth, they are organic matter, and we're held within these organic containers. And so they're going through upgrades. So this is a time to slow down to speed up. This is a time to pay attention, to notice, to slow the energy down in your actual body, in your daily rhythms, in your lives. There will be things that come through that ask for you to take action. Totally fine. Just make sure you are really sitting with it and going deeper and pulling it into your truth center rather than your emotional landscape, because we are in a Mercury retrograde as well. We're going to be entering Neptune retrograde. So it's not always the time to initiate something new. But if something comes through and it feels really aligned, check in a few different times, really let it drop in. So you can discern if it's actually in alignment or if it's something that's coming in more as a reverberation from the past. Now this week, coming back to this week, the Sun in Cancer squares Saturn in Aries. And this squaring is happening between two cardinal signs. So they're both initiators, but they move in completely different directions. Cancer initiates the feeling realm, the emotional landscape. It initiates by turning inward to what's really nourishing, what's supportive, what's protective, what feels safe. Aries is completely different. It's much more externally mobilized. It initiates through action and assertion and forward motion. So Saturn in Aries is amplifying that more impulsivity, the forward drive with the weight of consequence and demand that Aries carries. And consequence is Saturnian. So karma, consequence, the effects of our actions, responsibility. So there's a tension here between what you feel and what you need to do. Cancer's active this month. Of course, we have the Sun and Mercury in Cancer, and it's bringing us into our feelings. It's bringing us into our inner realm, which is so important because all of this work is really helping us merge our inner and outer realms. This might highlight where you feel pressure to act. Saturn in Aries will want decisiveness, forward motion, accountability, responsibility. It's not about feelings. Saturn is not about feelings. Saturn is about responsibility. This could reveal where you are avoiding responsibility, where you are retreating, where you are self-protecting, where you are afraid to take action, where you are sort of retreating into the Cancerian shell. It could also reveal where you're way too in fire, where you are acting impulsively, where you're acting too quickly, where you're acting out of emotion. That's kind of a big theme right here. We have an emotional lunar ruled sun squaring a fiery Saturn. Are you operating from your emotional landscape? Are you letting your emotions run wild? Are you reacting rather than responding? Let this Mercury retrograde slow things down a little bit for you. If something comes through, this pressure, this demand, this feeling that you need to do something quickly, sit with it. It will still be there. You don't have to make a rash decision. If there's a conversation that feels difficult or hard, move with it. Move your body. Let the anger move through you, or the fear or the grief, whatever it is. Move with your emotions this month. Notice what happens in your inner landscape. I have been so triggered this month so far. I mean, it's like we're literally 5 days in, but I've been feeling my Chiron in Cancer so active, and it's been really beautiful, honestly, because I've noticed how much more self-aware I am. I feel like every year when I come to July, Cancer season, I feel more and more self-aware, and I feel more and more in tune with my core wounds and where those points are held within me, the sneaky ways they can get activated, and how I can sort of tend those spaces internally first, move with them, be with them, give them what they need, reparent them, and then respond from there. And so often, it's actually not something that needs to be brought forward. Sometimes it is, and I will certainly do that. And other times, it's just something that wanted to be alchemized within me. So that's kind of the invitation here with this Saturn Sun square. Are you the master of your emotions, or are your emotions ruling you? Or are you giving your emotions too much power, too much weight? Are you making excuses for them? Are you afraid to tend them on your own, so you're projecting? Or are you totally disconnected from your emotions? Are you more in that fiery Aries energy? We have a ton of air and fire in the sky. Cancer's really holding it down. It's really the only weighted thing we have in the sky. Venus is getting ready to shift into Virgo, which will help, but that can kind of bring things too analytical and too in the mind. So there might be some opportunity here to really study your emotions and study your internal landscape and what you're feeling and where it comes from. The next day, on July 7th, we have Neptune stationing retrograde in Aries. This is Neptune's first retrograde in this sort of committed place within Aries. Last year it retrograded in Aries, but it went back into Pisces. It's staying in Aries this time. So there's a commitment here to really peel back the veil on the imprint of Neptune and Aries. This is the thinning of the veil. This is a reckoning point, an awakening, an opportunity to see really where we've been living in illusion and what has unfolded as Neptune's began moving through Aries. I think Neptune retrograde is quite clarifying. Retrogrades in general are underworld journeys for that planet in that domain. So Neptune in Aries is now in its descent. It's moving beneath the surface. It's going deeper. It's bringing us into our subconscious and giving us a glimpse beneath the ripples at the surface. So when I think about a retrograde, I think about the water becoming still on a lake or a pond or even the ocean. All of a sudden you can see all the way to the bottom. It's one of my favorite images. I'm also a Pisces North Node, but swimming in the Mediterranean, the waves calm, and I can see my feet and I can see all the way to the bottom. That's what Neptune retrograde feels like for me. The fog actually lifts when we go through a Neptune retrograde, and this is significant because Neptune is foggy in nature. The rose-colored glasses come off, which isn't super fun, but it's necessary. And there is a sobering in general with Neptune and Aries anyway, with Saturn, that Saturn conjunction. So you may be revisiting things that emerged in the spring. Issues, conflict points, where you have sort of applied this rose-colored romanticism to things to make them feel less stingy or less painful or less confronting, where you're perhaps too far in hope rather than reality, and where you're afraid to look at the actual evidence. This will be related to the archetype of Aries, the self, the identity. Wherever Aries lands in your chart gives it more of a personalized essence. So it's going to reveal where you've been so far in that Aries energy of sort of bypassing feeling, bypassing reality, moving forward, pushing, exerting your will in a way that's not actually supportive. I think that this is really a checkpoint. Neptune's going to be here for a while. Neptune moves slow, so it's going to be in retrograde until December. And this is a point. This is a reality check. Like I said, this is a sobering moment where we get to see, with all the things we're building, all the forward momentum we've been having, is it actually aligned? Are you in delusion? Are you living in illusion? Are you not anchored to reality in the way that you need to be in order to actually really materialize this new timeline for yourself? It's a point to reclaim really the authorship of your own becoming, your new reality, slowly, honestly, anchored and grounded. We have some supportive energy as Venus moves into Virgo on July 9th as well. And Venus has been in Leo, so it's been big and passionate and bold and warm even. And I actually think it's going to be helpful to move into Virgo, even though it's technically in its fall in Virgo. We need a little earth. We need a little water from Cancer, earth from Virgo. There's some practicality here. This is a sobering moment as well. Venus in Virgo is very practical, often to its detriment. But I do think it's stabilizing in this greater sky. I think that there's an opportunity here to use the mind, the analytical wisdom and skill of Virgo to, once again, sober up a little bit. So what's really practical? What's really available? What can we work with in the here and now? This is an embodied Venus. It's not always fun here. It's not as romantic as Pisces or Taurus or beautiful as Libra. But there's an attentiveness when Venus moves into Virgo. It's detail-oriented. It's devoted. There's a desire when Venus moves here to refine, to discern, to really know what is actually worth our energy and what we've been giving ourselves to out of obligation or habit or responsibility. So once again, with Neptune stationing retrograde, Mercury retrograde in Cancer, we get to attune to our own internal landscape and take inventory of what is working and what isn't. Where have we placed our devotion? That's what we're valuing. This is also an opportunity right before the South Node shifts out of Virgo for Venus to bring us back to those practices that really root and ground us, that are supportive as things move faster, returning to daily practices. Virgo rules the nervous system, the gut, digestion. So how do we inhabit our physical life, our physical body? The small acts of self-tending really compound and weave the fabric of how we feel, how we experience life. And at the end of the day, Venus here is providing an anchor, an earth anchor. It's quiet, it's functional, it's embodied here. It's bringing, once again, the focus to attentiveness, to paying attention. Maybe you don't need to figure it out, but can you just notice what's happening for you? Now, the shadow of Virgo is overanalyzing, perfectionism, needing things to be a certain way in order to feel good. I have this natal placement. It's conjunct myself and a Virgo, so I understand this intimately, and it can be really challenging to keep Venus in check here when she's in Virgo. She kind of tends to want to run the show, and unfortunately, it's very hard to live up to her expectations. So you really have to be in reality, be present with it, let things flow, but use the highest expression, the light expression of this Venus to discern what's real and what's not. It'll be taking in sort of an analytical approach to life over the next month. Can you utilize that as a tool without getting lost in it, without being too self-critical or critical of others, relationships, the world even? So this week is interesting. We have this sobering, this slowness in our personal lives with the sort of our personal planets, but then the outer planets are in air and fire and they're moving very quickly. So things might feel slow. They aren't, I promise you. So lean into the slowness, or maybe things feel really fast and you need to slow down, but pay attention, attune to present moment, to what's right in front of you, to what's actually happening. Tend your body. Maybe cut out something you've been overindulging in, perhaps with this Leo energy we've been having, and also noticing where you're coping with your emotions, with things that aren't actually supportive. And the card that I pulled for this week for the Soul Archaeology community, I pulled it from the Untamed Elemental deck, is the Pegasus card, and it's all about freedom. It says, born of the sea, Pegasus is a goddess mare with triumphant angel wings. She is a master at uniting the cosmic and earthly realms. Dressed as a warrior luminary, this noble equine rules the open skies and visits as you slumber. She's a defender of liberty, willing to carry you above the clouds of the familiar towards your soaring dreams of freedom. She imbues all she encounters with her healing frequency and offers royal companionship to those who respect innocence. Pegasus willingly presents what is possible for the evolution of your soul. She's here to escort you into a vast new sense of freedom. Now is the time to declare to the universe that you are complete with your limitations. If you're tangled in a thought or emotion that is holding you back, this is the moment to release it. If you're in circumstances that you've clearly outgrown, here is a sign that you're ready to move forward. If you're indulging in a habit that you know drains your energy, now is the moment to put it aside. Call upon Pegasus and allow her to take you to the heights of your choosing. All you must do is accept her reins. When it's balanced, you feel connection to your infinite potential. When it's imbalanced, you feel lack, limitation, addiction, and feeling trapped. To bring into balance, adopt a willingness to release self-limiting beliefs and habits. There you go. It was great to be here with you today, as always. If you can, share this with friends, family. Sharing on social media helps it grow so much. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. I have also been doing a lot on Substack. I wrote a deep dive on Jupiter in Leo and Chiron in Taurus that you can read, and it sort of has your rising sign downloads in that. And I'd love to have you there. So I linked that in the show notes. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a beautiful one, and I'll talk to you soon.